Welcome to the Did Nothing Wrong podcast, where we cut through the noise and help you make sense of the chaotic information space around us. I'm Griff Somke. Back in May of 2024, I sat down with Samantha, who's the former women's director of the now defunct hate group that was known at the time as Identity Europa. We talked about her journey into the darkness of the alt-right, how she found her way out, and how she is now helping others do the same. And with so much of that darkness in the world right now, sometimes it's critical to take a second to look back at stories like Samantha's and remind ourselves that sometimes people can actually see the light and change their hateful behavior for the better, and that hearts really can be fixed, and that a better world is always possible. Thanks for listening.
This is a crusade. This is a holy war against the deep state.
Where are the dictators? Where are the strong men?
Donald Trump is our instrument for retribution.
I'm going to fight for Christians. I'm going to fight for white people.
They have the Great Reset. We have the Great Awakening.
And why shouldn't I root for Russia? Because I am.
I want to see these people go through misery because of their grooming against our children.
After the assailant entered the home asking, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" Those are the very same words used by the mob when they stormed the United States Capitol.
I did nothing wrong.
On this episode, I'm joined by Samantha, who was once the women's director for the white nationalist group Identity Europa, and now works with Life After Hate, an organization that helps people leave extremist groups. Her story is both terrifying and inspirational. Samantha, welcome to Did Nothing Wrong. Thanks for joining me today. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Cool. So, what originally drew you to the white nationalist movement?
I think just my place in the world and trying to figure out who I was. I actually very recently have been doing some digging about my family history, and I knew that my grandmother was in Hitler Youth.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. And while she let go of the National Socialist viewpoint, I was reflecting on some of my old interactions with her and just situations where I grew up. And I kind of realized I think she never really let go of that very specific white pride.
Mm.
And as I went on in my life, I just felt like I was being pulled in a bunch of different directions. My parents wanted me to be one person. I wanted to be another. And as someone who tries to follow rules, I just felt really confused about who I should be listening to. And one day, about 2 years after I moved out of my parents' house, my dad called me and let some family secrets go. And some of them involved me. And it just completely annihilated my sense of self, who I thought I was, my worldview, everything about me. And I remember looking at the phone and I just said, all right, well, I'm going to drink about this. So in the middle of that, actually pretty early on in my drinking career, I met this guy that could sing, could dance, could knit, liked music that was more obscure than me. He just kind of had all of those things and seemed so sure of who he was. And I immediately fell in love with him.
Right.
It was exactly what I wanted to be for myself, just so sure. So we dated on and off for about a year and a half. And the last breakup before we got back together finally was about maybe 8 months, maybe a year. But we would see each other every couple months intermittently, between all of that. And we would just go on a date or be each other's dates for a wedding. But we never got back together. It would always be 2 or 3 days at most.
So it was definitely one of those relationships where there was a lot of conflict, but a lot of really strong attraction. But boy, can I ever not live with this person kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And, and I've repeated this a trillion times. I have never loved anyone or anything the way I loved this man. And I now know that that's for the better. But at the time, at the time, it was the first time I ever felt like someone really saw me.
Right.
And because I was so insecure about who I was like, well, you should tell me who I am. And so it started with little things. It started with, you'll come home earlier from work. I worked in the service industry. You'll wear clothes that are slightly more feminine, this, that, and the other. And so by the time that we had broken up for that longest stretch of time, my intention in all of that was like, I'm just going to be a better person. I'm going to like change my careers. I'm going to stop drinking as much. I'm going to improve myself. All, of course, with the intention of winning this guy again. And I'm pretty sure I broke up with him every time, but like I just was out of my mind, I guess. But so we finally got back together, and he had shaved his head and he had a beard and he was powerlifting and he read Dostoevsky and was really into like watching chess videos. And he just seemed so much more serious and so much more like self-proclaimed intellectual. And that's fine. That's hot. Like who, you know, what troubled young woman doesn't like the mysterious bad boy?
Well, of course.
So we got back together and he just started saying that I was a degenerate. You know, it became this thing where it was like, you are the perfect woman. You are also the enemy. I cannot be without you and I fucking hate you. And again, as someone who grew up with this, just like trying to be the right person and like toe all of these lines and figure all this stuff out, like I didn't even care if I liked him. I wanted him to like me.
Right.
So one day we were just hanging out and he started saying, you know, I can't defend you on the day of the rope and you're a degenerate and, you know, this, that, and the other. And I confronted him and I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And he just, I remember he sat down on the couch and he braced himself for me to hit him, like to punch him in the face or something. And he was like, I am a fascist and I don't want to be with anyone that doesn't support that. And I just like picked up my stuff and left. And so by the time I got to my car, I was like, all right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go online and I'm going to find all this fascist stuff that he's really into. I remember some of the sites. I'm going to like talk him out of it and like beat him at his own game.
Right.
So I get home, I go online. I spend like 5 days. If I am not working and I'm on my like smoke break or my lunch break or whatever, I am online looking up all this stuff. But within that 5 days, I just became so fascinated by it because it was so, it's the antithesis of how I saw the world. I didn't even know you could think these things. And so I called him and I was just like, you know what? Let's do this. Let's figure out what this is.
Was he surprised?
I think he was relieved and annoyed. I think he was relieved because that was confirmation that what he thought wasn't as bad as he was. But I think he was annoyed because I don't actually think he liked me that much. So for me to be so desperate he was just kind of like, can I just like have one thing? And I was like, no, like I will be a better fascist. But yeah, poor guy, really.
Oh,
when
man.
I think
you can just see it in his head thinking like, I finally found the thing that's going to, oh my God, no.
Yeah. And I think he knew that. I think he knew that fascism, white nationalism, all of that stuff was so far from who I was that I was absolutely devastated. And then it's like, you know, like people's obsession with like serial killers and stuff. Like it's so far from where you are that like you want to understand it, what makes them tick. And that's how I felt about it. Like I had no idea. By the time like a few weeks later that we were interviewing for IE, he was sitting behind the camera feeding me lines during the interview so that like when the JQ came up and I didn't understand what the JQ was, he just wrote Jews aren't white, like just right on the back of the camera. And I was like, you know, I just don't think Jewish people are white and they have a huge reach on media. And the guy who interviewed me, which was Patrick Casey, he was just like, well, it seems like we're on the same page. So I'll just go ahead and invite you to the Discord. And I was like, okay, bet. Like, if that's all that it is, then like, that's fine.
Right. Did the guy stay with it? Or did did he get away from it? Or is he still involved?
No, he left before I did.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. We stayed in touch for a little bit, but I think we both have an agreement that he and I know each other in a way that no one else ever will know us.
Right.
And I don't think either of us want that. And we have each other's numbers. I don't think we're blocked, but we have not called each other in years. There's just there's an understanding of just.
Some people, the best thing you can do for them is leave them alone.
Yeah. And I know he's doing better. I know he got out of the stuff that he was in. I know he's looking for peace. And I
Good.
think that's what matters the most.
That's good to hear. So you said in several interviews that, gradually you moved into more of a leadership role in Identity Europa. You were the women's coordinator at one point, and it seemed like they had you kind of like fast tracked for as much of a leadership role as, they'll ever let women have in a movement like this. Why do you think that is? Was it that you were great? Or is it that they're really trying to get women involved in this one way or another, and this is how they do it? Anybody who shows up who's competent and somewhat intelligent, and all of a sudden they're in leadership?
I think it's because I'm the best at everything I do.
Nice.
I think
that confidence.
Yeah, I was about to say, the white power movement really put that pride in me. No, it was a mix of things. The initial reason I became women's coordinator was because the previous women's coordinator had actually planned for all of the women to leave the organization, and so there was some altercation between some anti-fascist activists and a coordinator in IE, and they had allegedly stole the coordinator's phone.
Ooh.
And the coordinator had Discord and Slack, which is where all the coordinators coordinated. But they stole the phone, and so the women's leader was like, look, they're not going to put this on the server, but like someone's phone was stolen, all of our information is compromised, like we need to leave, IE is not safe, like you need to leave.
Right.
So there was one day where like almost every woman left except for me and two others, and I had called one of the leaders and I had said, hey, like I don't feel safe, like this would, said the same thing that they all said, and he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, look, this is what I was told, and I've only been in here for like 6 weeks, and like I've been in for 6 weeks and I already feel unsafe, like I don't want to be here. And he was like, look, I think you've made a really good impression. I think this woman is playing you for a fool. I don't, this stuff didn't happen. No one's information is compromised. In fact, like I think your dedication to telling me the truth, I think you'd be a really great women's coordinator. I think you'd be really good. And it was between me and I think this other woman. And I feel I talked a lot of shit about this woman.
Like you really, really wanted the job at that point.
No, I didn't. I did not want, I literally wanted to leave, but they find out that you can, so they make sure that you do. And
Right.
They promoted me. And the other woman, I think, just wasn't the right look for them. They had she had like video game tattoos and like a less than helpful haircut to her face and stuff. And I think I was just a much better look for them, physically at least.
Right. Yeah, and that's big. I mean, these people are all very, very into aesthetics, and the idea that you have to look a certain way is very, very important. People don't necessarily always catch that, but it's very important to these folks to have that look.
Yeah, and I think also like when it comes to IE or organizations that are like that or try to be like that, women are being put in charge because that means that women are safe in that organization, and that means that men coming in have a chance to find a good woman in that organization. It also demonstrates that we're the modern white power movement, that we don't discriminate in that way, and like girls have a better chance of succeeding here, and like if you want to make this your life, like look at that woman, like she's doing this stuff, you can too. And I was just looking so badly for a place to fit in and get along and all of that stuff. And like, yeah, it hit everything that I needed, where I think I've said it previously that like, I'm just a normal run. Like I am not going down in the annals of history, and that's fine. I don't care. But they, for being a populist movement, really make each individual person feel special, feel so necessary. But I think when you're in there, you don't realize that like you're special because the movement cannot exist without you. The ideology does not exist because it's true. It exists because people believe it.
Right.
And you cannot afford to lose people, especially in a dues paying membership.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't realize that these people make a considerable amount of money.
Yeah.
And dues are a huge part of it. And we've seen some of these groups like completely fall apart over money splits. And it's been kind of beautiful in a way.
Yeah.
Recently, there was a group.
NJP.
The National Justice Party, they sort of had their little blowout with people not liking how much some of these people were being paid. And I found myself looking at the numbers and being like, oh my God, you really make that much money doing this? It's shocking that there was that much money to even split up.
Yeah.
They're complaining about the financial split, and it's like, are you kidding? No. You guys would be working at like McDonald's, except for maybe Pinovich, he's a coder, he's got some skills, but the rest of you guys. And somehow you're complaining that you're only making this much money for being Nazis. Oh, wow. I don't get it.
Oh, yeah. And also for being Nazis that are not productive. Like, what were they actually doing with this money and lifestyle other than like jetting off on a plane for another pool party and showing up at CPAC to like get fucked up?
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the movement and you're looking at this, like, I would be very curious. That was something when I was in there. There was always this complaint. Every group would be like, we're going to be transparent about where the money is and where it's going. And we're going to do a breakdown and have like a whole financial thing where we tell everyone and explain to everyone what we're doing. And like, it never happened because ultimately they had to admit that they don't allocate their money to like good things.
No, you're paying for like Eric Stryker's wedding to that one girl, and you're paying for all this other stuff. And it's just like, this is ridiculous.
So I knew those guys too, of course.
Of course.
And someone was telling me that Eric Stryker had a lot of shit to say about me. And I was just kind of like, again, much like racism, like, find a new problem, dude. Like, I don't know, dude. It's been 7 years. Like, let it go.
Come up here and say that, little man.
I have all the respect for the short kings, but these guys are manlets. Like, it's just so embarrassing.
I love that photo of him at Charlottesville not being able to look over the shield. Everybody else has their shield up at eye level, and here's Stryker, just kind of like hanging out below it. It's like, fuck.
The only anecdote that I can think of, right before Charlottesville 1.0, I was on a Zoom with someone, one of the guys in IE, and I was like, I'm so nervous. Like, I'm 5'10". And so I was just like, I'm really nervous. Like, if something breaks out, like, am I going to be okay? Or like, are women going to be okay? What is the safety protocol? And they were like, we're really strong men. Like, well, we'll protect you. And then I got there and I was like, I am head and shoulders taller than everyone here. Like, if lightning strikes, I am gone. Like, there's no protecting me. And it was so upsetting to realize, like, you guys are not the Ubermensch. Please stop.
No. I've seen the pictures of some of these guys, and it's like, oh, no.
It's so embarrassing.
You're not selling that Ubermensch thing. It's just not happening. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. I feel so bad. I'm not trying to like spend this whole time gossiping and talking shit. I do feel bad.
It's totally fine. We can talk shit on IE. That's great. And NJP, I mean, they've earned everything that is falling apart for them right now. It's wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
It's great to see this whole thing fall apart. And it's the kind of thing that was inevitable when you looked at how their operation was set up and what they were set up to make money for.
Yeah.
It's like, they're not doing anything. They're podcasting.
Yeah.
And the guy who was their sugar daddy to some extent is in Russia and can't come back. Charles Bausman, he's not coming back. Yeah. He's gone. And if
he's done,
if he comes back, he's got questions to answer. And he's not going to like the people that are asking. So I think it's kind of appropriate that they ended up where they ended up in this big pile of recriminations and everybody mad at everybody and leaking.
I think what's great about it is that is a really good taste of what it really is like to be in the movement. Mm-hmm. Like, there is this like united front that people give to the public, but behind every Richard Spencer, behind every Mike Enoch, I do use their far right names just because that's how I referred to them.
Sure.
But like, behind every person, there is someone else with a knife getting ready to take you.
Oh, yes.
And oftentimes it's that meme of like Spider-Man's where they're all like pointing at each other. Like, they're all doing the same thing, but they think they're going to be better at it. So then when these groups splinter off, they might get like one toe ahead of where the last group was, but they will always fall apart and they always have to start over. And this has always been the case.
It's absolutely the song of their people. It just is. And I was lucky. I started studying this stuff in high school when I was in Spokane, Washington, and the Aryan Nations actually started recruiting at my high school.
Ew.
So I got interested in what these people were up to. And I started reading about this. I ended up doing a term paper my senior year on this. So I was able to spend a lot of research time. And one of the things I used to do was call a guy named Tom Metzger's hotline. He used to run a group called the White Aryan Resistance.
Yeah.
And Metzger was always fighting with someone else in the movement. A lot of the time it was David Duke. So like you'd call Metzger and you'd hear him talk shit about David Duke on his hotline all the time. And then you'd hear him talk shit periodically about Harold Covington and any number of other old school people. And you realize that like that never stopped.
Yeah.
These guys, the only thing they hate worse than the Jews is each other.
Yeah.
And they spend so much time tearing each other down. And periodically you'll get somebody who isn't that person. And half the time they just quit in disgust because they realize that these guys are a bunch of grifters. We've gotten this far and we're going to make a bunch of money off of these people. And that's what we want. We want our little kingdom. So it never stopped. It seems like it continues to this day. There's always going to be these internecine fights and there's always going to be these inter-movement faction squabbles. And it's the one thing that I think has kind of saved the rest of the world to some extent. Because if they ever really did get organized and unified around one leader, it would be even so much worse than it is now. I'm not trying to minimize anything. I'm just simply saying they're doing this with no unity whatsoever at the top level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As a woman who had some sort of title, whether it was just a name or not, I would have a little bit of access to the behind the scenes stuff and all of these things, but I was never really allowed to like participate, you know,
Right.
like they would come to me if they had like certain questions or whatever that like they wanted a woman's perspective on, but I was never like writing policy unless it was to take minutes for a meeting or, you know, do secretarial work. So all I could do was observe.
Right.
And I was around Stryker and Enoch and Richard Spencer and all of those names of people that are doing this stuff. And if anyone was going to get me and keep me in the movement, it was them. And I still saw through it.
Right.
Like I still was able to look at their behavior and look at what they're saying and look at the movement as a whole, still from an outside perspective, just feel like this actually doesn't make any sense. And at the end of the day, I agree with you. I think if they did unify, it would be a national bloodbath.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it would be a scary thing. And I think a lot of them don't take that first step or don't shoot that first gun because they also know that the movement is a lie.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if a Hitler type ever really showed up, if they ever really found that leader,
which they all do, they all think that they are the reincarnation of Hitler, Goebbels, or Himmler.
They absolutely all do. And as a result, none of them are. Nobody's ever going to unify behind any of these people, which is really, really a good thing. Because, oh Lord, there are a lot of people out there waiting for that person to show up. And if that person shows up, then they're going to have a built-in audience. But thankfully, the people who so far have stepped up to try and take that have not been the best and the brightest on some level.
Yeah.
And it has not worked. Well, speaking of backstage, kind of behind the scenes stuff, you did an interview a while back with WNYC, and you mentioned that everybody in the group that you were in at the time, Identity Europa, knew that the Charlottesville rally was going to be an absolute mess. And you're not the first person who said that. A lot of people seem to know that the whole thing was going to end really, really badly. And I'm always curious at that point, why didn't the organizers, people like Jason Kessler, Richard Spencer, who could have probably put a stop to this thing, why didn't they? Why did they let it go to the point where it ended up breaking any momentum that they were building and turned them all into national pariahs?
So, well, as you know from my court testimony, I lived with Eli,
right,
who was like the main organizer above all of it. And Eli truly believed that this would be the first fight in the race war.
Right.
And I personally didn't say anything because I was not in a position to believe I would live if I had said anything to anyone.
You were living with a violent nutcase at that point. And
it's between me and my therapist.
Okay.
But, you know, I think I also refrain from talking about those stories because that's not what my story's about. You know, that person impacted me enough that like, fuck them. I'm going to tell my story on my terms, and I'm really not interested in having that person have any more part of it than they did.
Right.
But I lived with one of the organizers, and they all thought like Kessler, and this is speculation, this is not a legal thing, don't fucking come for me with your dumb Nazi lawyers, but like Kessler really thought that this, like, the people of Charlottesville were being like really mean to him. And so he thought, well, if I come back with all these white nationalists, like no one in Charlottesville is going to mess with me anymore. And there was another organizer who thought that this was his chance to prove that, like, which I want to bring something up. I am very curious about this. So one of the other organizers was in the military.
Right.
They said that they were deployed and they went to like Kuwait and Afghanistan and all these places, and they killed a bunch of brown kids, and they bragged about that. And the running joke when me and this person lived together, he said that his favorite thing to do was to shoot first and ask questions later. And then later on in 2018, the New York Times did a piece that outed them as a liar, that they were never in the military.
Huh.
So here's my curiosity. Nathan D'Amigo, the guy who started IE, was in the military and was deeply impacted by the military and the failures of the system when he went out. Like, I am not saying, like, I do think Nathan D'Amigo is like racist and all that stuff, but he was also a soldier that was failed.
Right.
And anyone with the last name Vandal that you hear of, like, in the movement, Vandal is kind of like this adopted name that if you were ever in the military, you got to call yourself a Vandal. And that also kind of all of the security for the far right guys, they were always either law enforcement or military.
Right.
My question is, Eli ended up taking over IE and then left, or got fired, my bad. How did no one know he was full of shit about his military stuff?
You know, that's a great question. There's a quote from Upton Sinclair, the author, that I think answers it. It's from the book The Jungle.
Mm-hmm.
It is difficult to make a man understand something when his salary depends upon him not understanding it. And I mean, that just keeps coming up.
Yeah.
So I think to some extent, it wouldn't have done anybody any good. I mean, think about some of the excuses you probably saw made for some pretty bad behavior over the time you were there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Things that, you know, were definitely on the degenerate list.
Yeah.
And you find yourself thinking, like, this always happens. People always make excuses for their movement faves, regardless of what movement it's in. It's happened in punk rock. It's happened in any number of places. Yeah. So maybe they just realized or thought that he was too valuable to out. You know, maybe he was just too much of a movement guy.
I know that at the time, a lot of people outright said they were afraid of him. Like, he definitely put himself in a position. He bragged about saying that he like headbutted someone in front of the White House or something, which is like a felony.
Yeah.
But like, he would say that he committed all of these acts of violence, and he would threaten to murder pretty much any man that even looked at me. Little did he know that, like, anyway, it does, like, all of his friends, that's just more gossip, but like, yeah, I don't know. It was just something that I always wondered. Like, once I got out, I just kind of had this realization of like, everything's a lie, even the people that claim to be telling the truth. And like, if you could so easily lie and lie about the violence that you've committed, what makes it that you couldn't just lie about anything?
Right. They want that image. They want to be that guy. So they lie about it. And, you know, where do you stop? Where does the line get drawn on that? You're right. That's a really great question. And I think that the results of their work to some extent are the answer. You know, it doesn't. They just,
I think you also bring up the good point with the Upton Sinclair quote of like, their salaries depended on it. And also, if like the only person so far that's gotten away with being who they are in the movement is Enoch. He was married to a Jewish woman, and then he just simply divorced and said, I'm sorry, guys. And, you know, I hate Jews now officially. I won't even fuck them. Like, and they were just like, yeah, that's great. That's fine.
I remember when that came out, I thought they were going to kick him out.
That's what I thought.
I saw that happen. I remember the day he got doxxed. I remember where I was, and I read it, and I was like, "Oh, he's done. He's done."
Yeah, that was right after I joined.
Right.
And I think we all thought the same thing. And I do, to give Enoch any sort of credit, which you really never need to give a Nazi credit, but like, I do think the movement has gotten as far as it has with Enoch's help. If he was kicked out, and I think they all saw how valuable he was.
Right.
I think if he was kicked out, it would be a very different thing we're discussing today.
Right. These people are just simply too valuable.
Yeah, and I think with Eli, whether he was valuable or not, it was it was like this symbology of like, we let this guy get this far and it turns out he's a total liar. We can't let people know that we got one over on us.
No.
And so they waited for the New York Times to do it so that Eli could rebuke the mainstream media and not his own people, is my opinion of what I think.
No punching right or no enemies to the right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah, precisely. Okay, I'm really going to try and stop talking.
That's still fine. So it's fascinating that groups like Identity Europa and really that whole era of the white nationalist movement ended up being so big on euphemisms. They weren't outright discussing the JQ, as you mentioned earlier, in a lot of cases, the Jewish question. They would try to come to some intellectual rationalization around it rather than come right out and say that. They were trying to put definitely an intellectual spin on something that had historically been seen as a somewhat down market phenomenon. And now it looks like we're moving into something that one could call white nationalism 3.0. You're looking at guys like Nick Fuentes, who are coming out and they've dispensed with the euphemisms. They don't do that anymore. And they've moved into a dynamic where they just sort of say it. And then if they get challenged, they fall back on humor and say that they were kidding. They always say, it's a joke, bro. You don't understand. It's irony. It's this. And then why do you think that there's less of a push for intellectual respectability now than there was, say, 10 years ago?
I think it's a mix of things. Also, for what it's worth, Fuentes was an IE. I interviewed him.
Right.
He was just a baby. He was 18.
He was a little kid. Wee
little
kid.
Baby. Also a little tiny manly kid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I think it's cyclical. I think when you look back at all this, like George Lincoln Rockwell wanted to, wear suits and be respectable. Then you had, I don't know, I'm going to skip around a little bit, but then you have like, the skinheads, the boots and braces guys. Then, you have a Metzger type person where like, even though there was all this violence and fighting and all of these things, like he was still going on TV and trying to use media to like spread his message and do this. Like it's always been there. I think the far right, and also if you look, especially in 2016, 2017, that era of white nationalism, you still had like your Hammerskins, your TWPs, League of the South, Dixie, nationalism, whatever. IE was just one part of it, and IE was the first major leak with Unicorn Riot. So I think there was a kind of like, IE was always made fun of, as optic cucks, as just kind of like, you guys aren't going like whole hog Nazi, so like, why are you even here? And there's an irony in it, because now what was fringe is actually what a couple of our Congress people are saying, like on the floor. And there are people that are running and elected to Congress that were in IE. And so I think this is just new tactics. The people that were in IE that are doing this like genteel, like, oh, I just care about my people and I just want to do the right interest. They're actually just outright going to run for political office. And then you have someone like Fuentes where has no other job prospects. Like he is his boss. There's no reason for him to have to bullshit. He's already so nihilistic about his entire life that he just kind of has this, like, he has to put on this front of like, I am the true cause because I am saying it out loud. And we live in a world right now where like, that's authentic. That's this. And I think younger people are interested in it, but I do think that in another 5-10 years, it's going to clean up again. And it's going to become another like, oh, we just need to be a little bit more euphemistic. This is just part of how it works, because I think it becomes easier and easier to figure out white nationalism as time goes on. So they have to keep rebranding more and more often.
Right.
And this is just another attempt of like, well, does it work? And that's it. They're just throwing shit at the wall, in my opinion.
So after Charlottesville, you realized that this wasn't working for you, that you needed to get out of this thing. What was going through your head when you started reaching out to some of the journalists as you were leaving?
So there were two journalists, Andrew Morantz and Glenna Gordon. And ironically, Richard Spencer connected me with Glenna Gordon. She was doing a piece on women in the far right. We had a conversation that it was 3 days after the Unite the Right rally, and it made me realize I can't even sit down and pretend in public to support or defend any of this behavior. It's not something I can do. So I had that interview with Glenna, and I didn't talk to her again for a few months. And while I was realizing I needed to leave, I reached out to another person in the organization that I'd become close with and had said, hey, I'm thinking of leaving and I don't know how to do it. And they gave me Andrew Morantz's information, and they said, hey, I've been talking to this journalist, and they knew a little bit about what was going on in my personal life, with my at-home living situation and stuff. And
Right.
They outright were just like, look, there's a good chance that you will be killed. You probably should say something to someone so that at least your side of the story comes out. And so I did. I would rather leave with the building burning and everyone trapped inside than stay and continue to be a bad guy.
Right. Right.
And so I did, reaching out. I got really lucky with the two of them, that they were very delicate and sensitive and caring about my story and caring about me trying to leave in earnest. They're both Jewish reporters. They have no reason to be nice to me whatsoever.
Right.
They could have absolutely exploited me, and they didn't. And I'm really, really grateful and lucky for that.
And it comes through in reading and hearing the way you guys were talking that they weren't looking to exploit the situation. It was more like they saw a human being that was on a bad path and might benefit from having someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Nothing more, really, which was very, heartening to see.
Yeah.
Do you still feel like you have to watch your back at this point?
I think sometimes. Do I think I actually have to? In logically, intellectually, not really. I don't. I also live in a city where I've made friends in every city that I've moved to, and everyone ends up knowing my story, and they kind of have a yeah, if anything happens, call us. We'll, you can come and crash with us if your shit gets rocked, and it hasn't. But I do think that's something that just doesn't go away. The psychological warfare that's waged against you, especially as a woman, is the only ones that I'll really bring up is that they outright told me, we'll throw you in a fucking pit, break your legs and rape you, and you can't leave. And then once you can't have kids anymore, we'll just fucking murder you. And that was a daily, you are worthless, you mean nothing. And so, despite therapy, despite knowing I'm fine and all of that stuff, that's just something that doesn't really go away.
Yeah.
And I do know that they all think I'm really good breeding stock. They all told me several times and in different ways. And so I do think I'm safe. I do think I have a community of people that will make sure that I am for as much as they can help me.
Right.
But in my own head, anytime I go to a new restaurant, I'm always kind of keeping my head on a swivel. That's just part of it, and if that's what I get, if that's the worst of it, then I think I came off pretty lucky.
Yeah, definitely. What do you regret most about your time in the movement?
That I didn't leave sooner, that I didn't do more damage after. When I realized that I had started leaving, I was being threatened so often and so deeply that I actually started recording the person threatening me.
Right.
And I sent those recordings to other leaders in the organization, and that is why they left. They gave him the option of saying that he was like moving on to bigger and better things and starting this little club with someone else. But it's actually because I got them out. And I did my best to dismantle as much of everything as I could. And I wish I wrote more down.
Right. To be able to hand over this, that, and the other to people who might be able to take that information and really make them hurt with that.
Yeah. I definitely have a lot of photos and videos and stuff that I have like a kind of, like a dead man's thing going where.
But at some point, if you're afraid for your own safety with reason, as you were, you aren't going to be any good to anybody dead. You have to get yourself out. It's like the old thing about you can't put on other people's oxygen masks on a plane until you've put your own on.
Yeah.
And I think this is where you kind of have to give yourself a little grace and say, I wouldn't have been any good to anybody dead. I needed to get out of this thing on the first thing smoking. Then I can, sit down and take stock of this whole experience and realize, what I can do and what I can't do.
Yeah. And I think every once in a while I'll have that moment. Like, I live in a really great place in a really cool city. My life is, for all intents and purposes, the best it's ever been. I'm healthy. I'm so happy.
Nice.
And I will look back and I kind of have this, like, was I ever really in danger? Like, was it ever really a thing? And I do have to remember, like, I kept me safe. No one else did. No one else did this for me. So I appreciate you saying that. And like, yeah, of course, there's giving yourself grace, but also like what happened. I don't love that I did a lot of things that I did or said or approved of. All I can do now is just try and keep making sure that they eat shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you're working with a group called Life After Hate.
Yeah.
And Life After Hate is doing the Lord's work, as it were, getting people a place to help disengage from this once they've been involved. And boy, should there ever be a whole lot more people doing this kind of work. But walk me through what Life After Hate does when someone is seeking to leave the movement. They've come to you guys and they've said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. What happens?
Yeah. So first, what I would like to do is a little mini plug. I actually kind of run or like am a part of this project called The Daily Former, which is obviously a play on our favorite website, and which was lost. The original creator of that website lost their website in a lawsuit. So I feel like it's just worth knowing that the longer you stay in, the more you lose.
No.
So we have this site where we have a podcast, we have a website where you can write, do it anonymously or not. And it's just formers telling their story, giving advice, talking. We have a Discord server that we have people in, and it's for normies too. Like, you don't have to be just a former extremist. And it's just a really cool environment to be in. So hopefully you would listen to an episode, realize that you're making really bad choices, and then you realize you want help. You'll contact Life After Hate. And it's through anything, really. Like, we have a phone number that you can call. We have an email. There's a contact us page on the website. And very rapidly, you'll be answered by one of our case managers. And kind of the first thing that we do to try and make sure that, like, you understand how, like, legitimate it is like we have everyone kind of sign, like, a declaration of confidentiality. Like,
right.
We won't tell anyone that you're involved. You can talk about us, but like, unless your life is at stake or unless you absolutely need it, we will not tell anyone that you're involved in it. You can even stay in while you're getting out. And then you meet with a case manager of just kind of just getting an assessment of like, what kind of help are you looking for? Is this something where you just want to talk to a peer or another former to kind of, rehash some of your ideas, unpack some of the ideology and figure that out? Or do you need housing? Are you sick in a way? Are you in danger? Can we help get you to a doctor or a job or things like that? And we kind of just try to be, I've always described it as trying to be the person I wish I had when I was leaving, where we just kind of, we're not here to judge. We're here to listen. We're here to commiserate with you and let you know, like, yeah, it is really hard and it takes time and it's a lot, but the other side is very worth it. And so we just hope that people take us up on it.
Yeah, definitely. And how did you get involved with them?
About a year after I left, someone that I knew just saw like an interview with Angela King, who's one of the founders of Life After Hate. And I contacted them, and the process was a lot longer and a little bit very different from what it is today. We've done a lot of improving, and we are always kind of trimming fat and adding and fluffing up things. But yeah, I just contacted them, and then I was a client for a few years. Then we took a break, and now I'm back working for them, and it rules. It's such a weird thing where like, this is the worst thing I've ever done in my life. But had I not done it, I wouldn't have been opened up to this world of life after.
Right.
And this entire field of people that is trying to, like, I don't think for the most part, I don't think anyone in the movement is a bad person. I think they're people with really bad ideas. And the longer time you spend actively choosing to do bad, I think the worse it makes you. But I don't think that like anyone in there is condemned for life. Well, maybe some people, but for the most part, I don't. And you can come, and like, what's great about Life After Hate is like, we're not here to say like, oh, you've been in for so long, how do we know you mean it? Or, we think you need to get on TV. Like, we have tons of clients that think they need to go on and repent and drag themselves through the public square. And we actively try and not talk them out of it, but just kind of like, do you really know what you're doing when you do that?
Right.
So I don't know, Life After Hate has just been really instrumental in my life getting better.
Sounds like it, definitely. And it sounds like it's been very, very helpful for you and, for a lot of other people we've talked to. Katie McHugh, who also went through this, and we've talked to Lauren Manning, who also went through this. And it definitely really sounds like it's helped out a lot of people that otherwise might have been in a pretty bad place as a result of their involvement. So
yeah,
it's an organization that I'm really glad exists. And if you've got extra money or you're some kind of rich tech person and you're listening to this show, hint, hint, kick them some cash. They're doing the Lord's work, as I said.
Thank you.
So if you could go back and talk to the version of you that was beginning to get involved in this world, what would you say to her?
I get asked this question a lot. If I personally knew everything I knew, I would just go back to me and basically just be like, you poor thing. Like, this isn't it, And I was on a path where had I not done this, I probably would have, ended up at a party too late one night and in someone's house that I shouldn't have been at. Like, I was going nowhere fast. But yeah, it's truly not worth it. Whatever it is that you're clinging to in that ideology is usually some sort of deficit in your life. Examine that. Don't examine this whole like political stance and ideology, when really like you're just hurt because your mom didn't say she loved you enough. Like, figure out you before you decide to join an entire movement.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know that that's so like specific and whatever, but there is no real answer. Every person joins for a different reason, and unfortunately it would be easier if it was just for racism or politics, but it almost never is, and that makes it so much more compelling when people come to us, and sometimes really sad. But it's never just like, well, I do hate Black people, how do I stop that? There's always something deeper.
Right. And that seems to come up frequently. Often it's loneliness, and it's that sense of community that a lot of people just don't have. And the one thing about these groups is they're really good at making you feel like you have a community. They're very good at love bombing people in the beginning of all of this. And they will be those friends that you never had. And all you really have to do is just kind of hang out with them and mouth the right words.
Yeah, there's a reason that every person in there thinks that they're the next Hitler and Goebbels. No one came in thinking that they were the next Hitler. They were groomed to think that. You have to think that you're the next leader in order to stick around. What's the point of staying in this revolutionary movement if you're just going to be a peon at the end of the day?
Right. And you wonder how they if they thought that one through, because there's really only going to be one. But I guess everybody thinks it's theirs. They're the ones with the brass ring that they're going to have it.
Yeah.
So what do you find has helped you move forward through all the damage of all of this in your own life?
I found reading a lot, just like not just, political theory or history or whatever, just reading in general and allowing myself to acclimate back into a world of my choosing.
Right.
Therapy has been, shout out Donna, she should be canonized, but therapy, and I know that everyone, if you're in the movement, you think that therapy is like a Jewish construct and blah, 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 but like, it's not. That is just what they are telling you so that you don't actually examine what might actually free you from the shackles of the movement. Having a community, building one. There were a lot of people in my life that I had come to, like, once I started getting better, I had realized that I had actually grown out of a lot of friendships and relationships in my life that I was afraid to let go of. I was afraid to let go of my trauma. Would I still have a personality without all my bruising? And it turns out you do. In fact, you're like a lot cooler without, accidentally bringing it up after you drink a couple too many beers. Just being still, sitting with the bad thoughts. It's not like everything went away once I decided to leave, but I have a much firmer grip on it. And I know how to get my brain to just slow down and chill out now in a way that I couldn't previously. But really, just really looking at what I want. And I spent so much time caring about what everyone else thought I should be that I really never knew who I was until after I left.
Do you think you do now?
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And also that's ever evolving. I reserve the right to change my mind at any time, but that's also part of who I am.
I am vast and contain multitudes. Yeah.
Precisely.
Definitely. So how can people support you in the work that you're doing?
Donate to Life After Hate, get the word out, repost any of our socials. The Daily Former is a general podcast that right now is speaking exclusively about like just the experience of being a former, what it's like to be in the movement and think about leaving. We will be branching out to do other things. So just repost that, get the word out. If there's someone that you know that is even flirting with far-right behavior, you don't have to send us money, just send the word, we get more out of helping someone leave than any dollar amount will ever, there is no price you can put on that. So, just tell your friends.
The Daily Former is such a genius idea. Seriously, that is just hysterically funny. So, hey.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on today, Samantha. Really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and talk about some of this stuff. You've had a hell of a journey, and it's good to see that you got through some of the worst of it and you're in a much better place as a result, and you're helping other people get out of that same really toxic milieu. And honestly, if you're listening to this, and I know at least a few of you are, and you are involved in this and you want to leave, then these are the people you want to talk to. No judgment, no sense of, you are going to get hassled for this. They just seem to be the really good people that can help you kind of walk this through. So,
thanks.
Thanks for taking that time to talk to me today, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for lending your ears and putting the word out. That's a part of it. That's really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Did Nothing Wrong podcast. If you want to hear more, you can find us on the web at didnothingwrongpod.com. Please make sure you subscribe to get our content straight into your inbox. You can also follow us on Twitter at GRZABJJ, GRZABJJ, as well as DNWPod. We're extremely grateful for paid subscriptions and donations that allow us to keep doing this important work. Thanks, and remember, everyone mentioned did nothing wrong.